to Dawn Anthony singing. You can't see him very well, but this is Lavelle Bradford playing the piano from Charlotte. Behind me is Al Circle playing the drums, also from Charlotte. And on the bass from Greenville, right here, Mr. Shannon Hoover. August the 14th of 2012 was trying times in Enderley Park. We live at the corner of Tuckasegee Road and Parkway Avenue there, just 2 miles from the middle of town, and on our corner we lost a young man named Khalil. He was 13 years old. In a senseless act of violence, he was taken from us. He was a deeply beloved young person in the neighborhood. What followed was an improvisation, a grief that was improvised on our streets and in the yard of the abandoned church where he was killed, in the yard of that church. Our young people planned a vigil, and folks crushed the vigil. They came from all over. And this is a little bit of what happened there. Rebuilding a church in ruins is part of what God is doing through the young people of Enderley Park as they plan the vigil for Khalil. They decide the steps of the empty church will form the altar. The planning continues, and we begin to spread the word. There is no formal announcement. There are no flyers. There's no need. Word moves quickly on Tuck, and by the time the evening arrives, hundreds are crushed together on a stifling August night. The yard around the church is no match for the crowd. People spill into the streets. Traffic slows to a crawl, which does not matter to those gathered because the world has stopped. Dozens of mourners are across Tuckasegee watching, partly because there is no more space, and partly, it seems, in hopes that if they don't get too close, it will not really be true. Local media hover, they're ready to pounce on the grieving family to get an interview for the nightly newscast. At one point during the vigil, a little noise springs up across the street, the disturbance of grief unfolding. Focus remains, though, on the liturgy as it begins on the church steps. Jade sings. She trembles at the edges of the notes, but the power of her breath as it builds from a wobble into a clear note becomes obvious. While her voice is weak with grief, the Spirit animates her with mysterious strength. Danielle has a hard time getting through the words of her prayer. There's so many tears inside yearning to come out. But the presence of the Christ hovers there with her over the chaos of her fears. She cries and speaks. She speaks, then cries. And the Spirit turns her prayer into a creative and healing force. Other neighbors speak. The crowd offers shouts of support when a cousin begins a song that she cannot finish. They grow restless when a man with a trite speech and marketing materials for his nonprofit takes over the mic. Khalil's father, through the haze of his own trauma, speaks with beauty and power about compassion and the possibilities of forgiveness for the troubled young man who killed his son. The children write messages and tie them to balloons. They release them, carrying unspeakable prayers in hopes that they might be heard in the heavens. Those balloons, and our letting go of them, say everything that our bodies can say about the deep grief of that day. Though words do not come easily, we all know the meaning of our eyes lifted up toward a beyond that we cannot see or know. On the way up, the oak tree on the corner grabs some of those balloon prayers. It holds them. It keeps them, red ribbons wrapped in its tangle of branches, from sailing away to wherever prayers go. It had been watching that old oak. That old willow oak planted on the corner when the neighborhood was built was watching. That old sprawling willow oak, when it was still learning how to be a tree, watching piles of bricks being stacked into a sanctuary. It saw families headed for picnics at the amusement park. When the land speculators came through during white flight using fear and racism to break up the neighborhood, the old oak watched. When new families came in, having had their homes and other places taken, and their trees ripped up, the old willow oak was ready to offer shade for parents and leaves for kids to pile up and jump into. When Khalil exhaled his last breath under its canopy, that old oak breathed it in, watchful and still. For all those years, that willow oak stayed unmoved. It saw things beautiful and horrible, but never interfered. It only did its job, dropping leaves, nesting birds, making shade, until today. Arms outstretched, the tree snatches a prayer and wraps its long ribbon into a jumble. Why today? Why, after 80-some years of stillness, reach out now? Why not intercede on the day that it happened? The tree ruins the poetry of the moments, the balloons all sailing away out of sight up into the by and by. But maybe prayers belong in old willow oaks, up high but tied to the ground, released but rooted, not floating off into parts unknown, but here, present with us, in the neighborhood. We sing as the balloons soar with our prayers. I'm singing, but not because I believe what I'm singing. The old song is about the release of burdens, about God's abiding peace. I cannot believe in this, at least not today. I sing hoping to believe, maybe soon, not now. There is no blessed assurance that things will be all right in Enderley Park. Tears and hugs abound. Those gathered do the only thing that people can do, which is to hold one another up when no one would blame them for just falling down.
As you grow up, I want you to drink from the plenty cup. I want you to stand up tall and proud. I want you to speak up